Hey, everybody, what's happening? All right. Hey, hi, everybody. Welcome here tonight. We're going to be getting started here in just a moment. Um, how's everybody doing this evening? Becky and Craig, how you doing? Good to see you guys tonight. Man, a little choppy tonight. A little choppy. Hey, Suze. All right, well, let's go up here and see if who the first Matt Clements is the first comment tonight. Very nice. He's not even here. So he took away the first comment and he's not even here. Way to go, Matt Clements. Some kind of friend you turned out to be. So we'll give Amy still credit for that. Chicken, rice, and carrots. Very good. Tim McCandy, you're in the house. Hi, Linda Horn. Jan Scott. Jan, I still want to answer your question from last night. I just need you to help me understand what it is you're asking. So if you want to say more about that, I would love to answer the question. I don't understand what you're asking. So, hey, y'all. That's from Tina and Mike. Hey, Eric Gurman. Hey, Daryl and Sherry. Hey, I heard Sherry made a big step today. Decided to walk the plank. Going to do a savage race. That's the rumor. So, all right. Hey, Miriam. Oh gosh, Scott says grandson West took a header from his bike. That's one of the rites of passage. we've all done that one. So glad he's just banged up. Hopefully he'll be feeling better soon. So. Oh, Holmes County, very quiet. Amish are celebrating Ascension Day. Is that today, Ascension Day? I mean, I'm not. How about that? All right, well, good. So Teresa's here. Jess Mack is here. How you doing? Hi, Crystal. Hey, Dave and Amy. And yeah, Teresa. Hey, Marsh and Joe, who are also in the kids live stream or kids premiere earlier. Marsh is getting really proficient at these YouTube comments. I'm super proud of her. So, all right. Oh, going to Holmes County in July. All right. Make sure you get some angel food cake. Ain't nothing on this earth better than Amish angel food cake, and you can take that one to the bank. So, Dennis and Trent are here. How y'all doing? Hey, Ange. Joyce Koenig is in the house, so we know the party can start. Becky and Craig. Hey, Suze. Christina's here. How you doing? Carson Engel. Hi, Carson. How you doing, buddy? Linda Burkholder is here, but no book yet. Hopefully soon. I checked today. I think if I remember correctly, it was in Columbus today. So hopefully sometime soon. Tim Dickey, not to stir things up again, but it was announced that casinos can open up at 50% capacity. UMC. Look, man, here's the problem. Here's the problem we're running into with this opening up thing. People don't, meaning we're all sitting very close to each other. And what's one of the number one things we do when we're in church? We sing. And guess what you're doing when you're singing? You're blowing coronavirus all over everybody. So that's the problem we're running into. We'll have to have some serious social distancing and mask wearing before we can come back. So, so that's what it is. In casinos, they don't sing much, so there's less of a concern, I guess. But so that's kind of where we're at with this. My hope is that in the next couple of days, the component that I need to do live streams to the sanctuary will come. Because here's what I'm thinking. And I was going to save this till the end, but since Tim, you brought it up, I'll go ahead and say it now. Here's what I'm thinking is we may, once I figure out this little component and how it works, we may, as an experiment, run some possible open evening live streams where they will be both live and online, which means if you want to come here and be a part of the live studio audience, I'll be down in the sanctuary teaching, and there'll be some people down there, and we'll be live streaming it from down there. Now, this is after I get to figure out how to make this thing work. And we're going to use that as a baby steps to reopening. So that's what we're currently considering in hopes of getting back in our sanctuary, the next, foreseeable future some point. So, but that's what I'm considering as an experiment as to how social distancing is going to have to work in the sanctuary setting. And since obviously nobody's going to be singing during these evening live streams, we don't have that issue. And that's going to be our experiment. So, it doesn't mean all of you have to come out to be here live, but y'all could, because we'll be down in the sanctuary. We'll have plenty of room to spread out There's 34 of you in here right now, but that's kind of what I'm thinking about. But I got to get that component here and learn how to use it, and those are two large steps. But that's what we're thinking. So, hey Beth Reedy, and hi Margie and Doug, and appreciate you all being here tonight. So, all right. My big, yeah, Carson, buddy, I know, I miss it too. Yeah, and glad to have you join us tonight, Carson. We're reading a book tonight to be a part of this. It's called The Christian Atheist, and we're just going to have a conversation about that. Don't worry about not having the book. I'll let you know enough to keep you involved. So, Candy says now the goalpost has moved to singing. I'm only telling you what they're telling me. So, yes. See, Joyce, that's the problem. Did you all read that email I sent out? I gave you the standards that we have to keep in order to open back up. It's like 3 pages of stuff in order we'll have to do. So there's a lot of stuff that we have to do to comply to come back. And I don't know if the goalpost needs to move because pretty much everything is between us and the goalpost right now. So that's where we are. So
here's something I found on the web. According to blogs.com, Obama's reform allows the insurers to continue marking up the cost of healthcare by 45%.
That's very.
Did that answer your question?
I didn't know I asked that question, but thank you for that information. I have no idea what's going on here. I guess we all just learned something. So, anyways, that's where we all are. And again, I don't want you guys to think that I'm not taking this seriously. Both the crowd that wants to come back and the crowd who's scared to death. So don't think I'm not taking it seriously. But we're going to continue live streams for First Light and Parking Lot for Awaken, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll get back together. So, hey, Candy, why don't you tell me how you really feel? I'm with you, Candy. I think there's a lot of alarmism going on here, but look, this is the world we live in now. So, and they'd love nothing more than to shut the churches forever. And I don't want to give them any more reason than what they feel like they already have. Okay. All right, everybody. Hey, so we want to continue keeping each other in prayer. As you all well know, there's a lot of things going on out there, and I'm glad to have the 39 of you logged in here tonight and a part of this conversation. So, the book that we're reading, as you all well know, is The Christian Atheist. We're going to start tonight with chapter 2. We're going to do, my goal is to do the first half of chapter 2. We'll see how well that goes and just have a discussion about that. And any of you who have the book, and again, if you don't have it, that's entirely fine. In page 47. And the very first question I want to ask is, any of you who have the book and you read this opening example about this little girl, how many of you were mortified by this story? How many of you thought that this little girl is a serial killer in training? And friends, if you've not read it, I'm seriously not joking. I'm not being sarcastic. I'm not overstating this. I am being for real. Run into each other's shelter house. Deb, we might be able to do that. Okay, so all right, so I wasn't the only one who was like, oh my gosh, by this. All right, for those of you, yes, this is one of the most shocking little kid love stories I have ever heard, and I mean ever. And friends, I know that you all know that I like to do things, kind of overreact to things for emphasis. I am not overreacting this one. All you people in here back me up that this was seriously creepy. All right, so for those of you who don't have the book, let me tell you the story here real quick. He's talking about shame, and so I'm going to get to that, but here's the story he tells that he felt shame about, which I think actually running and screaming would have been more my response, but teach their own. So he had a crush on the proverbial little girl next door, as we all did growing up. Every single guy has this story, the girl next door, and he was just in love with her, thought she was wonderful. And so he had dreams about rescuing her from pirates. All you guys out there know exactly what I'm talking about. We all did that. And so one day he was really excited because she invited him over to her house. He thought, dang, and he goes over there and he's all excited. And if you ever read the book, you're going to swear I'm making this up. So you guys who read this book, you back me up that I'm telling the truth, that this is how the story goes. So she goes over there and she's caught a frog, which obviously to a little second grader thought, oh my gosh, she catches frogs. I mean, she's the greatest thing ever. And so she has this frog and she pulls the frog out and shows it to him and goes, do you think I should kill it? I'm not making this up. And he's like, what? And she's like, so she takes the frog out, puts him on the table, and smothers the frog right in front of him. And he was traumatized by this. And honest to goodness, I was nearly traumatized by reading it. So to all of you who read this, I want you to tell everybody else right now that is exactly what this story is. Pastor Tim is not making this up. I could not believe this. I just, yes. So, yeah, you guys back me up. Tell everybody that I'm not making, because I wouldn't make up a story like that. That's crazy. Smothered that frog by strangling him right there in front of that little kid. I mean, yeah, she's going to be the star of an episode of Criminal Minds or something at some point. But wow. So, all right. So you guys got my back. That is seriously what happened. So he tells this story about how he felt guilty. How he felt guilty about doing this because she asked him and he was, intimidated by her. He didn't want to be like uncool or something. So he didn't stop her from killing the frog. And he felt guilty about that, which I can see that. I mean, my goodness gracious. And so he carried around some guilt about this for quite some time, that this frog died a horrible death, which, it just, I was so shocked by the story. I had to read it a couple of times to make sure I was understanding it right, because that was so off the wall from what I expected to have happened. So this experience, as is absolutely appropriate, changed his view of this little girl. I guess his crush on her was, oh gosh, that's the wrong word, crush. But I guess his infatuation with her was, not pretty much cured this day. So after this experience, which again is traumatizing in any way you could imagine this, he says, knowing that I'm on the page 48 right now. I'm in the paragraph that begins with, I was never able to look at Missy or myself the same way after that. I'm in that paragraph on page 48. Knowing that my choice cost an innocent frog his life sent me into a shame-filled depression. So he felt shame for not stopping this little girl from killing this frog. I promise we're going to move on from this, but I was traumatized by the story. But he said, I never looked at her the same. I never looked at myself the same. How many of you have, and you don't have to be specific, but how many of you have that, I wished I'd have done this differently moment in your life? How many of you got one of those? And I'm only asking this question because everybody's got one, and I want y'all to see you're not alone. How many of you have one of those, I wish I'd have done this differently moments? And clearly he wished he would have spoken up and said, let's not murder the frog, right? How many of you got one? Come on, jump in here, be honest. How many of you have a wish I'd have done this differently moment in your life from your past? Okay, to all of you who think you're the only one that screwed up as bad as you did, I want you to watch these yeses come up in the chat, because there are folks here who have this moment where they wished they would have done something differently and they regret. And let me tell you something, the guy whose face you're looking at here, he's got a bunch of them I wish I'd have done differently. And I don't know about murdering any frogs. I don't think I was a party to any of that, but I've certainly got some situations from my past that I wish, my goodness, I could go back and do them differently. And sometimes it was, just negligence. I just wasn't paying attention and something got past me. Other times I legit went forward and did something that I wish I could take back. So we've all been there, and hindsight's always 2020, and that's one of the things he's going to talk about. Now, once and we're going to talk about the devil quite a bit tonight too. Once the devil gets his foot in the door, and he puts his foot in the door through shame. Once he gets the shame foot in the door, it becomes a really slippery slope, so to speak. So if you go on to the next paragraph, I'm still on page 48. The next paragraph after where I was just reading, the first sentence there says, before that twisted encounter, and let's be honest, the word twisted, his description of twisted is generous. Before that twisted encounter, I'd seen myself as basically a good kid. That changed things. So my next question is, not only and my first question was, do you have things you wish you had done differently? My second question is, do you have events in your life that happened? Now, these may be things you're not responsible for, but things you were a part of, things that happened. That was what I call a life divider. Have you had a life dividing experience? And what I mean by that is your life is now everything that happened before that event and everything that happened after that event. Do you have those? Now, some of those can be wonderful things. This doesn't, the first thing, obviously, if you wish you'd done something different, that's a negative. This one could be a positive. It could be both. It could be something that was really bad. Could also be something that was really wonderful. You're really great. So I want you all to think about that for a second. Do you have those life-dividing moments? What came before and what came after? And you have them good and bad too, don't you? I mean, you have things that you're super happy that happened, and you've got other things that were just, some good, some bad, Scott. Yeah, and it's a balance of them. And we've all got those. And the ones that were great, we look back on and we can't fight the smile off our face. And then some of the other bad things that happened, you look back and you just get this flood of, oh, geez. So we've all got those life dividing moments, and those are the kind of moments that we're going to be talking about, particularly with this particular chapter of this book. Okay. So I think it was through this experience with this little girl that Craig began to realize that there was evil in the world. He probably hadn't, as a little kid, probably hadn't thought about that too much, but now he clearly saw that there were some problems in the world. Okay. All right. So he also identified that this wouldn't be the last time that would happen. So skip on to the next paragraph there. It says, shame was a direct contributor to my years of Christian atheism. So first, I got two questions about this sentence. Shame was a direct contributor to my years of Christian atheism. First of all, why is shame where this starts? If we're going to profess living close to God, but do nothing about it, which is what we talked about in the last chapter, about how we can confess, belief in God, and I want to be a Christian, and I want to be a part of God's will, and yada, yada, yada. But those professions and confessions don't result in anything actually happening. So that's Christian atheism as Craig defines it. How is shame the first step in that process? To get us to say something that we may not mean as much as we wished we did. We want to say, God is all important to me, and following God is important. And how is shame the first step in the process of moving us away from faithfulness and into this Christian atheism concept he talks about? How does shame begin us on that journey? Why is shame Satan's first line of attack? Anybody want to jump in for this one? Why is shame where this process begins? Any idea? What is it about shame that makes us very susceptible to sliding off? Backsliding is a term I've heard used. Why is shame an easy first step in that process? Nobody? Okay, so shame brings with us a feeling of unworthiness. Clearly, there is no doubt about that, and that's a very easy thing for us to fall into, and it's a very easy lie that we'll believe. You get to the point where you start to question everything with shame. Yeah, shame, Anna Kay, and all the rest of us. Shame fills us with questions, and questions can be very, very, very difficult. Guilt is powerful. It is powerful. It's like a nuclear warhead in your life. Unworthiness, there again, Christina Good, makes us afraid to speak up, Candy, and shame can do that because if we have shame in our life, the number one thing that we try to do is hide it. Unworthy again, good, Joyce. Daryl, Christian, because we've seen other people really come down hard on people for in judgmental ways. We've seen that, Daryl, certainly. Becky says, very easy door for Satan to attack us. Yeah, because that door opens real easy and it swings both ways. As a young person, shame is a strong emotion that their minds can't comprehend. That's true, which is why you should, whenever you're scolding your kids or scolding your grandkids or kind of getting on their case about something, you should always scold the behavior, not the kid. If you want to take advice from if you parents want to take advice from a non-parent, never ever belittle your kids. You can say your behavior was bad. You can say your action was bad. You can say your choice was poor, but you never, ever, ever belittle the kid by telling them, you're just a bad kid, or if you were smarter, you wouldn't do. Never, ever, ever even suggest things like that. Because first of all, it ain't true. And second of all, that can do way more damage than you intend. So lack of confidence, shame can destroy your confidence because again, your number one, the number one thing that you want to do if you have shame is you want to make sure no one sees it. And you expend a lot of energy on trying to hide your shame, that your confidence goes right out the window. So Teresa's having an internet problem. Sorry about that, Teresa. So, okay, but let's continue on in that same paragraph. The next sentence says, when we become consumed with shame about decisions and actions, belief in God can never evolve into a loving relationship. Okay? So let me read it again. When we become consumed with shame about decisions and actions, belief in God can never evolve into a loving relationship. Why not? Why does shame stop this? Why does shame stop the development of a loving, healthy relationship? I mean, we can take it even farther, not only with God, but with other people. Why does shame prevent that from happening? What is it about shame? What is it about shame that prevents things from growing? I mean, we talked about last night about how healthy things grow. Anything that's healthy grows. Anything, and healthy living things, I should say, grow, including relationships. And shame is definitely a detriment to that. And Becky's answer was a good one. It's a very easy trap to fall into. And you take Satan's ability to lie, and he gets his foot in the door with shame. We can quickly become, as Deb says, disappointed in ourselves, and like Linda says, worthiness goes right out the window. That's exactly what Satan wants to happen. And if you continue down in that paragraph, I don't know, another couple of lines, it says, Christian atheists hate their pasts and hate themselves in equal measure. Christian atheists, people who profess but don't practice Christianity, they hate their past and they hate themselves in equal measure. Why would Satan want that? Why would Satan want you to hate your past and translate that into hate of yourself equally? Why would he want that? Why is that such a big deal? Why is that such an emphasis? To cause hate to seep into your life through your shame about the past, and that ends up getting directed straight toward us. Why does Satan want that? Oh, isolation is a good word, Suze. Absolutely. That hatred of yourself can absolutely cause isolation. Because again, if you're dealing with shame, the best thing the biggest thing you want to do is hide the shame. If I had some kind of shame about the appearance of my face, I probably wouldn't be doing these live streams. And I figure I'm torturing all you guys by making you put up with it for an hour here every night. So okay, for control. Yeah, and Satan loves that because as soon as he gets you interested in what's going on over here, I mean, there's no telling what he can pull over on you. Separate from God, same as isolation. Very good. Disappointment in ourselves. Yeah, Satan loves that stuff because we can expend a lot of energy for nothing over those kind of issues. Prevents us from turning to God because, again, all we want to do is hide our shame. It's exactly what Adam and Eve did in the garden. They ate the apple. They went and hid because they realized they were naked. God comes walking through the garden and says, "Hey, where are you guys?" And they're like, "Hey, we're naked." He's like, "Who told you that?" And so as soon as they became aware, shame was the very next thing that happened. I mean, right clear back at the beginning. Project shame into relationships. We're actually going to talk about that exact concept coming up here. I got a big section I want to talk about tonight with relationships and shame in them. So hold on to that, Teresa. We're definitely coming back to that. Satan wants to be in control to make you weak, Trent. I mean, clearly we've seen that. Hatred is destructive. It's like a boric acid poured into your life and will destroy everything that you see. So yeah. All right, very good. All right. All right, skipping over to page 49. There's a sentence there that starts with, as a second grade frog killer, I learned to equate what I did with who I was. I learned to create a situation where what I did was who I was. He drew a line of parallel there. Now, the first question I want to ask about that is, why is that a bad thing to do, even if what you did was good? I mean, obviously, the example he gave was horrendous, but why is he equating who you are with what you did? Why is that bad, even if what you did was a good thing? How do our actions not? How do making our actions be who we are rather than represent who we are? How is that a negative thing? Because I don't think that's just semantics. I don't think those are just words. When we equate who we are with what we do, you're stuck because I suddenly I'm in a situation where I have to do a bunch of stuff to get out of where I am. If I am completely defined simply only by what I do, and there's no identity, other than that, something that God can redeem, then yes, if you find yourself in a bad place, then you got to get yourself out. That is incorrect. Yeah, that's not how God sees us. That's exactly right, Mike and Tina. Not only can you not move forward, like Sue said, we also get into a situation where we are now defining ourselves in a way that God is not defining us. And generally speaking, not doing things the way God does them usually makes them bad. It's a general rule. So that's something you definitely want to watch out for, because what this line of thinking results in is it's the difference between, and he says this like in the next sentence, we begin to think that it's not that we've done something bad, it's that we are bad. We didn't make a mistake. We simply have a rotten heart, and that's where this came from. And I hope that you all can see the difference. This is not a semantic argument. This is not, saying the same thing in two different ways. I think these are two very different things. If you make a mistake, which, who's exempt from that one? If you make a mistake, is that you making a mistake, or is that just evidence that you're a bad person? Because if you decide I've done something bad because I am bad, and there's no way I can be redeemed, what's God supposed to do with that? Where is there any space, any space for grace in the middle of that? How can capital G God respond to something if you've already condemned yourself? It's no good. Because God's grace, as wonderful as it is, doesn't have any space to do anything with. And sure, it's easy to lose sight of your true identity because we have a lot of forces in this world that are trying to talk us out of it. And sometimes we let the world do that. And that's not what should happen. Our identity should come from God, no place else. And to allow that that identity to come from some other source other than God, other than our Creator, is going to be damaging. It's going to be destructive. It's going to be not good for you. And that's something you're always going to want to watch out for. So, all right. I'm going to ask this question, but I'm not going to make you write this in the comments because I want you to be honest. You're all going to say, "Oh yeah, yeah, perfectly," but I want you to really think about this question. Have I managed to talk you out of this? There's a lot of people, of the 37 of you in this, even in this chat room right now, who are still struggling with the difference between making a mistake and having an action define you as evil. I know that. I've been doing this job a long time. I've had conversations with lots of people. It's hard to not allow your bad actions to define who you are. It's very hard to identify yourself by not focusing on your mistakes. Now, there are some people who have no problem with it and they fly off the other end of the scale, and that's bad too. But there's a lot of people who struggle with this identity thing. It's an identity crisis, but not the kind of identity crisis that you think. It's an identity crisis where we allow things to define us that shouldn't. And other things that should define us, we ignore. It's about what Scott says right there. It's about salvation becomes works. We can earn it. Man, the Bible could not be more clear on this topic. It does not work that way. It's a gift from God. Because as Tina and Mike says here, Jesus died for a reason. And if we don't allow our identity to be graceful in that way, we are doing ourselves and we are doing our Lord a disservice. And we don't want to do that. And the problem with this is, again, you may think, this is Tim splitting hairs or he's going off on a tangent or whatever, and fine if you want to think that. But I'm telling you that there's a lot of people who are just running through their life with a blowtorch because they cannot accept forgiveness. They won't allow grace to do anything. And they're just destroying relationships. They're burning through from one bad situation to another. And again, they may be perfectly functioning and have jobs and families, and on the surface, everything may look good, but inside their heart is just a bad place. And it's a bad place because they cannot allow themselves to be defined by a gift. They want to be defined by their actions. And that is a recipe for failure. We should all be doing good things. We should all be avoiding bad things. I'm not trying to lay anybody off the hook for that. But those good things we do are not because we are good or bad. Those good things we do in response to the good that's been done for us. That's a big difference. And that's why grace, Jesus was the ultimate form of pay it forward. He poured that grace into our lives so that we could go forward and pour into the lives of others. And on our best days, that's what we do. And so that's what I need y'all to see. Satan wants us to see ourselves and we'll feel the lie. Or I'm sorry, see the lie. It's the opposite of how God sees us. Well, that's right. I mean, think about it. God saw you as willing to die for, and God saw you as willing to trade his only begotten son for. And, he created you and he thinks pretty highly of you. And if you, the last thing the enemy wants to allow to happen is for you to realize that, or to live into that, or live in response to that. Satan don't want that. And that's why he's trying to get you to turn away from that. He's got to talk you out of that one. Because if he doesn't, then you're going to start bearing fruit. And you darn well know that Satan don't want that. So see the lie. Joy says it's very hard to forgive ourselves. That's right. We're a far harsher critic than God is. God is the one who's always kind of portrayed as this judgmental one. God's judgment don't even hold a candle to what we do to ourselves and what we do to each other. And what's going on here? And so that's what we need to see is the lie that's in that, and be able to live the truth and live in response to the truth. And that's honestly the only way it works. Oh yeah, society won't let you forget your mistakes. No, neither will your coworkers or maybe your family members or your boss or whatever. Joe says, "I am good with most anything I do. My greatest failures, I feel, I have made were the times I chose not to do anything at all. But the voice in me asks for more." Yeah, those missed opportunities can cause shame and guilt too. No question about it, Joe. And that's why it's so important for us to intentionally and aggressively live in response to grace, with every expectation that we're not going to be perfect. At the same time, with every expectation that we can be better than what we are, by seeing ourselves the way God sees us and live it and live in such a way that we can make God right. And that's very important. Okay. We're going to move on to the next section here. Entitled "It's Always the Shame." There's a little play on words there. I'm on page 49 still. It's always the shame. Very first sentence, and we're going to take a little bit and talk about this one because Teresa has already led us to this place here, and I want to make some comments about this. Very first sentence: as a pastor, I've discovered that many people are dying slowly in a secret tomb of shame. Here's the question I want to ask you: true or false? True or false? This sentence, and I'll read it to you again in a second. True or false? This sentence is where 100% of all marital problems begin, at this sentence. Let me read the sentence to you again. As a pastor, I've discovered that many people are dying slowly in a secret tomb of shame. True or false? 100% of all marital problems begin with this concept, with this sentence. People that are dying slowly in a secret tomb of shame. Yeah, very good, Tim. This to you, Joe. A plaque that says, "You've only failed when you fail to try." It's a good slogan. All right, so my question: true or false? 100% of all marital problems are caused by people who are slowly dying in a secret tomb of shame. Often heals at the point, strongest at the point of fracture. Yep, we're going to get to that tomorrow night. Sherry, we're gonna. I don't think that's in the section we're going to get to tonight. I don't believe. No, it's not. But we are going to get to that. So, 100% of all marital problems. This is the question I'm trying to get you to. Sorry, we got a little bit of a distraction here. 100% of all marital problems are caused by people who are dying slowly in a secret tomb of shame. Think about all the things that shame does to you. And Eric just nailed the first one right there. If you have shame, you expend so much energy trying to hide it, trying to conceal it, that communication will die. I mean, die. Just not happen. And I meet with so many couples who come in here, and you know, I have a rule. I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I have a rule when I meet with couples and they come in. Actually, I have this rule for most people who come in for some kind of counseling or a pep talk. I ignore the first 5 minutes of everything that you tell me, because I know that whether you're coming in to talk about your marital problems, coming in to talk about what's going on in your life, you just need somebody to vent to. The first 5 minutes contains no relevant information to what's going on. I know that. Y'all don't think that we preachers figured this out, but we did. Everybody always starts these things with a smoke screen. Everybody does it. If I came to your house and was telling you, confessing to you problems in my life and things that I wanted to get to, I'd start with a smoke screen too. So I know when a couple comes in, I have to stop myself from like doing something else while they talk because I know the first few minutes of the conversation is absolutely pointless. Has nothing to do with anything. It's until I start asking some probing questions then and make them talk about what they don't want to talk about, because people will actually tell you a lot more by what they don't say than what they do. And I'll tell you, there's nothing that will destroy, as somebody who has done it, there's nothing that will destroy a marriage quicker than lack of communication. And there's nothing that destroys communication faster than shame. And yeah, so what I'm saying is the reason that people fail in any relationships, but marriage tends to be one of the, or is the biggest one. Shame will erode the relationship. And it's normally shame as to what one person is afraid to let the other one know. Now, there may be good reason why they don't want the other person to know. There may be good reason why they're withholding that information. I don't know if that good reason will justify withholding it, whatever it is. But I'll tell you, you let somebody become ashamed of something or make one member of the relationship behave in such a way that it bumps into the shame of the other person, that marriage is doomed until we get that problem fixed. It is doomed. And so that's why I'm telling you, shame is a dangerous thing. The problem is it doesn't look dangerous and it doesn't feel dangerous. It just is dangerous. And that's why dealing with the past and dealing with the present, especially dealing with the present, but also dealing with the past in healthy ways, helps us more than we realize. So, and that's what I want to say to all of you is be careful with your shame. Be careful with what your shame makes you do, or be careful with what your shame prevents you from doing, because that can become a real issue, be a real problem. And okay, so I got Cheryl and Jack thinking about this one, and but I want you to think about that shame, because what you're afraid might come out will destroy a relationship. I've seen it so many times, and I tell you, the thing that breaks my heart when couples come to talk to me, and all of a sudden I realize that one of them is lying through their teeth and don't realize it. They become so accustomed to hiding the shame, whatever it is, that they don't even realize the smoke screen they're putting out. That shame destroys communication, and lack of communication destroys any relationship. It just happens to destroy marriages faster than anything else. So, my friends, keep that in mind. We all have regrets from our past, and we think, it's part of who I am. It's no big deal. Nope. All those are clubs over which the devil may hit you in the head with, and that's where those things come from. Shame is a dangerous thing. Shame is the only thing more dangerous in your life than shame is bitterness, cynicism. I've seen that destroy things probably more efficiently, but shame will still get it done. Shame will still get the job done. That's why Satan likes it so much. He likes bitterness best because it's one that it's a little more aggressive, but shame will just do terrible things. And I've seen it so many times. And I tell you, if you want your marriage to thrive, the best thing that you can do is never, ever, ever, for any reason, ever, no exceptions, never break this rule. Never shame your spouse. Even when it's just the two of you or in public, never shame your spouse. Because I tell you what, you take an otherwise well-balanced, healthy, fun-loving person and you shame them, they will turn into a wildebeest in a moment. I mean, they will turn into a rabid animal. I've seen it happen. And the other person's like, whoa, what did I just step on? Because you won't know. But that's what shame will do. And whenever you bump into somebody's shame and you get this overly huge reaction that you weren't expecting, you stepped in something. They knew it, but you didn't. And so be careful about that. And if you get a whole bunch of landmines in your house of things that you never want to step on, and you suddenly realize that every time I get close to this topic, my spouse turns into a turtle or he turns into a rabid animal, you know there's something there that person feels shame about. And that will cause problems. Will. Not a question of if, it's a question of when. And the question is easy to answer because it's now. And so that's what I want you to see. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you, is because shame is just like this live grenade that we keep carrying around. And, if I handed you a live grenade and I'm like, here's the pin and here's the grenade, I mean, you're not going to pay attention to much else than making sure you're holding that grenade. Well, your shame is the same thing. If the devil manages to get you to accept some shame that God has no desire for you to have, if the devil could talk you into accepting some shame, then you have just picked up a live grenade with no pin, and your attention will go to nothing else. Your whole life will be about defending the shame. And by defending, I mean hiding. I mean, the word I should have said was hiding. Your whole life will go into hiding the shame. Is guilt the same thing as shame? They're very closely related. I call them cousins. Because if honestly, yes, I would say, because if something happens and you feel guilty about it, and you think that whatever the mistake was, whatever the thing was that happened that caused the guilt, if you think, well, that's just evidence of what a piece of crap person I am, then yes, that will cause shame. If we think that every mistake is simply evidence that I am a scoundrel and I'm a wretch, like the song Amazing Grace says, what that does, there's no redeeming that. No amount of grace is going to help that, because it's a title you accepted. It's a title that you carry around. And that's going to taint, it's going to color everything in your life. It's going to be colored like that shame. That is one heck of a burden to carry around, let me tell you. Am I making sense to you? You guys all with me? I know the comments kind of slowed down, but I'm hoping it's because you're taking this in. Tell me if you're with me. You guys still here? Yeah, we have, there have been times we have guilted people into doing things, play on their shame and things like that. That's probably not good. A lot of times it's out of the frustration of the person trying to get somebody to do something. But yeah. All right. So if you want to be a good spouse, again, if you want to take the advice of a divorced person on how to be a good spouse, maybe you shouldn't do this. I don't know. But the worst thing that you can do, the number one way to wreck your marriage, and it will do it light speed, is to shame your spouse, to make them feel ashamed. If they have something they need to confess to you, you could be angry that they betrayed you. I mean, depending on what it is. But, if there's been an infidelity or there's been some kind of problem along those lines, there's been a letdown. If that happens, and the one partner can't quit shaming the other, I tell you right now, the marriage ain't going to make it. I mean, I can give you a nearly guarantee on that, because that shame will become a nuclear warhead in their relationship. What is your take on Christina's question? Joyce asked. Did I miss a question up here? Christina said, I've never made the connection of lack of communication to shame. Is that a question? It's a very good comment. Thank you for walking this way with me. Is that what you're talking about there, Joyce? Yeah. I mean, if you're afraid that somebody is going to judge you or make you feel shame, why would you want to tell that person anything? And if one spouse has fear that the other spouse is going to do that to them, well, I'll tell you exactly what's going to happen. They're going to quit talking. They won't say anything. There will be no talking. I mean, look, everybody that's in the chat room, the 39 of you who are here right now, are exempt from what I'm about to say. Okay? This applies to none of you. However, I have had people in my churches in the past that I knew all they wanted to do was lash out at me. They had a chip on their shoulder from the whole world, And sometimes I didn't realize it till it was too late, and I got hurt. I got hurt through that. But you know what I do with those people? I got to keep them at arm's length. I don't tell them things. I don't have in-depth conversations with them. And you do the same thing, even if you don't realize it. If there's somebody in your life who doesn't accept things and wants to do the shame game with you, you're not going to want to tell them stuff. And the worst thing is you don't want that relationship with your pastor, and you certainly don't want that relationship with your spouse. Now, there are certain people in your life you don't need to be telling things to. I'll definitely give you that. But in those very significant relationships in your life, if shame is an issue there, the communication will just evaporate because shame breeds fear, and fear that don't do nothing good. So, and it just breaks my heart to see. Christine, and I appreciate you being there with me. And I just there is a lot of shame that I'm sorry. Shame greatly affects communication. I don't know where I was going with that other sentence, but shame greatly affects communication. And when you got people, and you're in significant relationships with them, and they don't share much about their personal life, it's probably because they had a boatload of shame here. And that will cause people to clam up and just put up a wall and say, this wall does not get penetrated by anybody. And that's not good for a marriage. I'll tell you that right now. A lot of other relationships that's bad for too, but particularly marriage. So, okay. Have I drilled this point home good enough? Okay. Y'all with me? Sherry says, learn when and how to walk away from toxic people. I don't know about walking away, but you do need to learn. This is a whole and the whole idea of toxic. I'm assuming we're going to get to that in this book chapter, though. But there are people out there who are toxic, and I would venture to say one of the main reasons they're toxic is because of the shame that they carry, and that shame can be brutal and cause them to behave in ways that are brutal. And watch out for that. All right, so always the shame. I'm skipping down now to when he talks about this website that his church put together called mysecret.tv. People could get on and anonymously confess, things. They were thinking that would be a help. And he talks about many of the gut-wrenchingly honest confessions recorded there illustrate the lies of the shame cycle that hurting people believe. I did something similar to this it was a long time ago in one of my early churches I served in my career. Does 51 years of marriage say anything about communication? I would say that it does. You've either learned to live with each other's shame or you've learned to talk through it, one or the other. I did an exercise similar to this a few years back in one of the churches I served for Lent. I had everybody, and you guys have all done exercises like this before. I had people share things that they wanted to give over to the Lord, and then I took them and burned them. And we had the ashes there as a part of a celebration we had. And before I didn't ask anybody to sign them, so I don't know whose was whose. But before I burned them, I went through and read them. Not out loud. I read them myself. And holy cow, there's some really awful things out there that people are carrying. And it's heartbreaking. It really is. To the burden that some people carry over things that happened, things that may or may not have been responsible for, and it's really heavy. And when you get shame surrounding those things, man, it just complicates your life. Satan loves it, because it's like this, it's in his eyes, man, it's the gift that never stops giving, because shame can come back and flood your life no matter how good or bad things are going. And the way that he pulls this off, if you skip down, I'm on page 50 now. He says, when our past pain becomes our present identity, the shame cycle has claimed yet another victim. My friends, we have to learn to fight this. We have to fight this shame becoming a part of our identity as to who we are. We can't allow that. And why can't we allow that? Because God said we shouldn't allow that. I mean, we're talking about grace. Think about how much offering that grace cost. It wasn't free. It wasn't cheap. I'm sorry, it is free, but it's not cheap. That's the saying. And the idea is God offered that to us at great cost. So for us to allow Satan to shove that shame back in our pocket after he erased it makes that grace irrelevant. Because we're still carrying it around, and that shame is still something we're still trying to hide. There's no transparency. There's no openness in that. And that could be really damaging to your physical health, let alone everything else. Tim, how do you counsel people who feel guilt or shame about things they have no control over? The approach that I've used, having done this a whole bunch more times than I ever wished I would have, is I give them a scenario that's similar to the one that they're having a hard time getting over. And I always make the scenario about me. And I say, well, this thing happened and man, I feel terrible. That person will always say then, well, you shouldn't feel bad about that. You didn't do anything. And I'm like, gotcha. I got you. I set the trap and you walked right into it, because what happened to you is no more your fault than the thing I said was my fault. People will see it in other people. They won't see it in themselves. That's how I do it, is give somebody an example of something you feel bad about. Make something up. It doesn't matter. And then when they say, well, you shouldn't feel bad about that, and all you say is, you shouldn't either. People will see it in other people long before they see it in themselves. That's how shame works. The phrase, I'm ashamed of you, people can say that, but that's not really how it works. The way it works is, a shame is always something we internalize. We may look at somebody else and be like, oh my word, but the shame is always internalized. Shame, the shame that lasts is what's about us. Rebecca says, why is it so hard to let go? It's actually not that hard to let go. What's hard is allowing it to be let go, because the devil will continue to pick it up and like, hey, you forgot this. You forgot this. Take this back. You forgot. That's why it's hard. We can set this stuff down. You've all been in a powerful worship service where chains were broken and lives were freed and spirits were risen. And when you walk out the door, Satan's out there greeting you on your way out, going, hey, you forgot this. Hey, here's this shame. You've had this for a long time. And just hands it right back to people. I see that happen all the time. It's so hard to let go because it's so persistent. The lie is so persistent. And in order to get away from the lie, we have to trust in grace. We have to put faith in something other than ourselves. And that's very uncomfortable. So, that's the way that's why it's so hard, because it sounds so contrary to everything else we see. Nobody gets charged in a courtroom, gets convicted of a crime, and then has somebody say, it's all good, go home. That's not how it works. I'll give you an example. Billy Graham once told a story that I thought was great. He said, here's how grace works. True story he told. He got a speeding ticket. And he legitimately did it. So he went to court for his day in court. And the judge who was sitting up on the bench said, we're driving whatever, and here's the fine. All of a sudden the judge goes, hey, are you Billy Graham? And Billy Graham says, yes. I was super embarrassed. I'm sorry. And the judge said, okay, fine of whatever it was. The judge then takes off his robe. Now, Billy Graham tells this story. Takes off his robe, sits it on the chair, goes down to Billy Graham, shakes his hand, thanks him for what he did, walks Billy Graham personally over to the clerk of courts, pays the fine for him, and takes him out to lunch. That's grace. That's how grace works. Y'all see how that story goes? And that's the story Billy Graham told. I don't know if it's apocryphal. I don't know if that actually happened, but that's a story of how grace works. Now, the reason we pick these things back up is we deny. We say, oh, no, I should pay that. And then we say, oh, no, I should buy you lunch. And God's saying, that's not extravagantly generous. I'm a generous God. And so don't deny my hospitality. That's grace, friends. That's how it works. It is that crazy. And when we don't allow that to do its thing, it does nothing. And so think about that. So okay, yeah, thanks. Scott says you confess sins to God, ask forgiveness, and can't let it go. That lack of faith is Satan's lie. Yes, because Satan. Remember, we friends, we studied Job. We studied Job in this very series. What did Satan do? God said, "Hey, isn't Job the man?" What did Satan say? No, he's not. What did Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar say? They said, "Job, you're not the man." What did Elihu say? "Job, you're not the man." What did Job's wife say? "Oh, you're not the man." But Job, the reason Job made it to the end of the story was he never allowed them to define that for him. He was mad at God. He was mad at everybody else, as anybody would be, but he never allowed the situation to define who he was. The events that happened around him did not define who he was. And even though Satan used everybody in the world to come and tell him something different, he never called God a liar. Not one time. He called God a lot of other things. He said he's not fair. I'm kind of mad. If he comes down, I'm going to give a piece of my mind. But he never called God a liar. If you think about it, that's what shame says. Isn't it? Is that not the central message of shame? You're calling God a liar, the God of all grace, the God with a capital G. That's right, Amy. You're calling that God a liar with shame. That's what shame is. It's saying that God can never let this go. That's what shame says. Shame is calling God a liar. So that's I think that's an important distinction for us to think about. All right. Let me see if I got anything else here. All right, I know we're over time. You got time for one more question? I want to skip over to page 51. There's one more thing I wanted to get to, and I promise I'll make this fast. But I'm on page 51. I'm starting with the paragraph that says, when we let shame control our actions, we cannot know God because we cannot live our lives for him. I'm not going to ask a question. I'm just going to tell you. Shame can literally become a little g God. We can make shame a God. We can live our lives around shame. You know, if we got something in our past that bothers us, we can live our lives around that. And that shame can literally become a little g God. Because everything in our life is about responding to or dealing with whatever that shame is. And that's, again, not what we want to have happen. So my friends, make sure your God has a capital G. That's going to be our big slogan. Make sure your God has a capital G, because if he doesn't, it might be shame. That little g God that you're dealing with might be shame. So make absolutely sure in your life that whatever you're living your life around, make sure you got to spell it with a capital letter. And make sure it's a big G that's there. So, okay, I ran over a little bit tonight. Sorry, I got a little fired up tonight. I think that people think too much about what other people think about them and not what God thinks of them, which leads to not accepting God's grace. Yes, because shame could become a crutch. Tina, Mike, and Teresa, you are correct. And I think a lot of times we allow other people to assign reputations and assign things to us when we should really only allow God to do that. So definitely keep that in mind. All right, we're gonna put a pin in it here. Let me tell you where we're stopping, so you'll know where we're gonna start tomorrow. On page 51, there's a little subheading that says "Breaking the Shackles of Shame." You see that little subheading? Oh, thank you, Joyce. You're so kind. Thank you, Joyce. Breaking the Shackles of Shame on page 51. That's where we're going to start tomorrow night. And if you guys can keep me on task, we'll finish chapter 2 tomorrow night. At least that's the plan. So, Breaking the Shackles of Shame on page 51. That's where we're going to start next week. All right, guys, you enjoying this book? You guys enjoying I enjoyed the Bible studies that we did. I really did, but I almost enjoy doing these books more. I feel like I get more discussion out of you guys, where the Bible studies were almost more of a good, an hour long sermon for me. So I really am enjoying. I like this book a lot. And all right, I see some of you are having similar experiences. Um, Chapter hit hard, Christina. Always glad to hear that. And Teresa, I certainly agree. A great discussion tonight. So glad to have you all here. Oh, Amy. Amy says, make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Yeah, it keeps YouTube being nice to Wayne Street. So give me a thumbs up if you don't mind. It forces us to challenge ourselves with tough questions. It does. There are some tough questions in this book. And so thank you all for doing it. So Linda, Burkholder, and Margie, I hope the book comes soon. I hope your book comes soon so you guys can follow along with us and be a part of what's going on here. So, all right, Anna Kay, very good. Well, thank you all so much. You guys, honestly, and thank you for coming. It is such an honor to me that you choose to spend your evenings with me. There's so much more entertaining stuff out there you could be doing, and you choose to be here with me, and that it warms my heart. It sincerely does. So thank you all for being here. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. And communication is always key. And shame, if you don't take anything else for tonight, take this. Shame is dangerous. It's not just a little thing. It matters. So don't allow shame to linger, because that just keeps the door cracked open for Satan to get in and cause problems. So shame is dangerous, and don't forget it. So, all right. So here's a good closing analogy. You guys all know I love you very much, and I appreciate you all being here. So what should you do with your shame? You should do with your shame the same thing you should do with your hands. Go wash them things. All right? You guys have a great night. Wash your hands. Sleep tight. Have a great evening, and we'll see you all here tomorrow night. Thanks for coming, everybody.